Hello and welcome back to Reinforcement Talking. My name is Serene and I'll be your host, and we've got a very special guest on with us today. We're very honored to have Kumardev Chatterjee here. Hi. Hello.
Hello, Serene. Hello,
Kumardev
Eduardo.
is a global serial tech innovator and entrepreneur, British Chevening Science Scholar, and computer science from our very own University College London. He's been an expert on entrepreneurship at the World Economic Forum since 2013, is on the Forbes Tech Council, is a European Commission expert, and Metaverse Mastermind, who co-founded the world's first multi-billion-dollar Cognitive Metaverse at NEOM. So a quick intro on what this episode is going to be about today. Human reality has always been rapidly changing. It's an evolving landscape of cultural intersections, global events, and economic forces. However, technology has been changing what we know of reality. Should we consider the virtual real? With the metaverse, more questions regarding the human experiences that make something real are being raised. And so today, Kumardev will be here to chat with us on what he thinks about the metaverse and where you see it going in the future. So with a quick intro to the metaverse, how do you define that and what makes it different, or should we even differentiate it from the concept of virtual reality?
Well, first of all, Serene, thank you for inviting me, and thank you and Eduardo for setting up this podcast, which I think is obviously very well appreciated by the existing students, and now I think we will probably get it out to the alumni. And so this is a great initiative. Well done. Secondly, it's good to be back at UCL in one of the buildings. As you mentioned, I studied here. I did my computer science, my DC and DS. Back in the day, 2004, I believe I graduated, and then I was lucky enough to be invited back to give the commencement speech for the engineering graduates in 2019. So, I continue to maintain ties with UCL as best as possible, and it's good to be here to talk about the metaverse today. In a propose to your question, I think the first thing we need to understand here is that the metaverse is not an alternative reality. I think this is where there's a lot of confusion, because people think, are the big companies in the world, starting with Facebook, Meta, starting to create an alternative reality which would be even more, let's say, engaging, but potentially more damaging than what we have today. And the simple fact of the matter is that most metaverses that will come to fruition and will actually scale will be an extension of the existing reality. So what is virtual reality? Virtual reality has always been a reality that uses, let's say, a synthetic reality that is created using 3D, in which you can potentially immerse, not entirely, but potentially immerse, as in you can have a sort of point of view, depth of field of vision, where you are actually looking around in a world that's 3D and that's all around you. And of course, because the eye tricks the brain then thinks that you are in that world, and you can then engage, and your hand movements or your other movements can be tracked, motion tracked, and then can be reflected back. So that's kind of the extent of where VR goes. What's happening with the metaverse is that you create a platform where you are both simultaneously in the physical reality that is around you and a reality of other digital objects that and these two connect together and you're immersed in them. So imagine us having the same conversation, but instead of just three of us here, a group of 20 people, where the remaining 17 are actually holograms that have been projected into the room. You don't see the holographic equipment, and you don't notice it, just like you don't notice the speaker up there, just like you don't notice the Wi-Fi up there, or even the fire alarm. But equipment like that will be able to project holographic projections of other people, and we'll interact with them as if they were here, and vice versa. And this interaction will be made possible by metaverse platforms. So the question always is the metaverse more real than reality? I would say the metaverse is reality plus, is that you enhance and extend your existing reality with the help of technology. And this technology has been building for a while now.
Great. Building on that as well, I wanted to ask you, I know you work very closely with NEOM, Saudi Arabia, and they've invested multi-billion-dollar investment into these metaverse technologies. For example, the digital twin technologies. For those who don't know what a digital twin is, it's basically a mirror of the reality into the metaverse. And so I wanted to ask you where you see the applications of these digital twin technologies, not only for industry, but for real people as well.
So digital twin as a technology has been around for a while. The way it started was initially as 3D projections. So, if you remember back in the day, 10 years ago, the first 3D projections, and everybody was very excited. There was in fact a time when there was talk about 3D TV, which never took off. And then there was the idea that you could have a 3D projection in thin air. And then now it's become a bit of a joke because you get these toys, like a little 3D car in the room that can be a watch or whatever it is, right? So that's how a digital twin started. That is to create in 3D with light projection the replica of a physical object. Now, of course, the field evolved very fast, and what you've now seen is that you're able to create very realistic digital versions of physical objects that can then allow you to experience that object as if you were physically there, right? And this has a number of applications. So in smart cities, you can have digital objects and digital twins to actually figure out what's the best configuration. You can run sociological, demographical, anthropological experiments, figuring out the right configuration, figuring out what works, what would make sense, what would be a blind spot, etc. But beyond that, you can use digital twins to actually model experiences. I think that is what the metaverse, that is where the metaverse is, and digital twins sort of merge or complement each other. Is that if you hear me talking about metaverses, and there's plenty of links on YouTube, etc., you see that I always say that a digital twin is a fundamental component of metaverse. A metaverse to me, and others might differ on this, but to me, and for the metaverse that I built at least, it's always about having a digital twin as the basis, because if you want to extend reality, you have to start with a model of that reality, and that is what a digital twin does. Now, beyond that, what you can then do is then you can take a digital twin of an object or even a city and put that in the metaverse, and then compose and recompose it. Right? You can't do that with a physical building. It's practically impossible to decompose a physical building, even if you had full access rights and if it was, made in a modular way. But a digital version of a physical building can be decomposed. So, for example, you could add another floor. You could change the configuration of the rooms. You could change the way people interact with that building, how they enter, how they exit, all that sort of thing, where that building sits in a set of buildings. So, really, a digital twin, I would call it a fundamental component of what a metaverse is and should be.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure we've all heard about the EU's 300,087 euros 24-hour beach party in the metaverse to launch their global gateway strategy. And they really pumped it up. It was this really hyped thing on TikTok for young people to come and learn about the EU, the European Union. And it featured avatars dancing to house music. And 6 people showed up. How do you see young people engaging with the metaverse in the future?
So, first of all, I think, at the EU level, we need to obviously learn more about how to engage with the younger citizenry and the demography. And we obviously don't do a great job at it today. We have a youth and education division in the EU. I'm an EU expert. I worked with the European Commission for a very long time, and obviously very well linked with the Commission. I know that we probably have a long way to go there in terms of learning, especially how to communicate the more weighty worldly topics that the EU normally deals with its younger citizenry, which I think is very important, because you are the future, and the EU is trying to build a world mostly for the incoming generations like you guys. Second is that, yes, I think I personally applaud the commissioner for having had the guts to actually set up that beach party on the metaverse. You could question whether the technical platform was the right choice, although it was built by an European company. You could question whether the model and the promotion of that was done entirely correctly, whether it was rightly pitched, wrongly pitched, etc. But nevertheless, I really applaud the courage and the let's say the spirit that the commissioner showed in trying to engage with the demography and try to engage on the metaverse and to do new things. And of course, we've learned, the Commission has learned from that, the Commissioner has learned from that, and we will probably try and do that better. But I think overall, as we all say, the way to success runs through failure. And I think this is a failure that we should not be ashamed of. It's a failure that we should look at and learn from. And there were some good things. Not everything was a failure. Maybe the engagement could have been better. Maybe we could have done it in a different way. But I'm not particularly in favor of a lot of the Eurosceptic press that, including in Brussels, that is being negative about the whole thing. I think the Commission did the right thing in trying to do this, and I hope that we learn from it, and the Commission does, and the EU does better in there. In terms of how do you engage with the metaverse, I think this is a fundamental question that goes way beyond the point that you've rightly raised. I think here there are a lot of pundits, and I'm sorry to say some very influential thought leaders have been going on to the airwaves and talking about this is how you engage, this is how you don't engage. And I think this is really speculation. At this stage, the metaverse is a brand new platform for many. Unless you're a gamer, and unless you've been on places like Fortnite and Roblox, and unless you've been unless you're a older gamer or an elder gamer who's been on Second Life sometime 10 years ago, and now you found a second life with the new metaverse platforms. I think the majority of the population have not experienced the metaverse. As I keep saying in everywhere I speak, that if anybody, there are no metaverses today. They're all proto-metaverses, including Roblox, including Fortnite, and the real metaverses will start to come into the public domain at the end of the year. So there's probably a period now where we are speculating more than we are speaking from experience, expertise, or with insights. So one of the key issues is, apart from talking to the correct demography and engaging with the correct, is also how do brands engage on the metaverse? How do institutions engage? How do governments engage? And this is where, to a certain degree, the billion-dollar questions lie, because the companies that will get that right, or the individuals that will get that right, will be able to derive a lot of value from it, right? Fundamentally, I think the only thing that can be said, based on all the experience we had so far, the unfortunate one with the beach party included, is that no one actually understands at this stage how to engage in the metaverse. So the Horizon World did a couple of experiments where they had some massive concerts with well-known artists in the metaverse, and they did the exact opposite of that too. They tried to do quiz nights in a pub, and the audience for both were roughly the same. So what do we take away from this? Are we saying that massive concerts in the metaverse are not really a good idea? Are we saying that smaller, more intimate gatherings are not a good idea either? I'm not so sure. I think fundamentally today we have one major issue, which to me is the beta blocker or the bottleneck to all of these engagement conversations, is that we just don't have enough people in the metaverse yet. And the reason we don't have that is because accessibility is a problem. Is that, if you're looking at access in the metaverse, unless you're in the gaming community, unless you're willing to wear a headset for 8 hours, being consistently on the metaverse throughout the day, that way you can engage in different ways and learn from that and figure out what's your favorite way of engaging, I think we're just not there yet. So this question, which is not only very relevant, I think is fundamental to whether the metaverse will succeed, is whether these different entities and stakeholders can actually engage in a meaningful way and in a profitable way on the metaverse. I believe we are still 18 months to 2 years away from even understanding the contours of this. So what should brands, individuals, companies, and even large governmental bodies like the EU do? I think we should just keep trying and just keep experimenting and seeing ultimately what works. No one has the answers, not even the famous marketeers, and definitely not the ones who are doing podcasts almost every day talking about how to engage in the metaverse. Many people have never even been on a metaverse, and yet they're talking about how to engage there. So let's all just hold our horses, experiment, keep an open mind, and we'll see in a couple of years what actually works and what doesn't.
One thing I found really interesting that I picked up on when I was watching your past talks on the metaverse, was that you mentioned that the feature of the metaverse that should be included is not only like the digital twin stuff, not just a social platform, but also the digital marketplace. And I want to link that to the role that you see blockchain and cryptocurrencies playing in the metaverse. And do you think that the recent shifts in the blockchain market and the cryptocurrency sphere have impacted the progress of the metaverse?
Excellent question, Serene. So let's start with first debunking a few myths here. One of the myths, and it's an unfortunate one, although it serves both ends, is that you need crypto or cryptocurrencies to make the metaverse successful. And this is a myth. You can have a metaverse that has absolutely no cryptocurrency at all, right? And it'll still be successful if it were to be successful at all. I mean, it's not because it has cryptocurrency that it'll go from being unsuccessful to successful or vice versa, if that were the case. Number two is that when you look at the metaverse as an experience or as a platform for experience, the question boils down to what type of currencies, if any at all, do you need? And fundamentally, the basic threshold is met if you're able to barter. So if I were to give you a token or an object and vice versa, fundamentally that will solve about 80% of what I need to do. It's only for more complex things that I would need to have a structured way of managing this bartering, and therefore you get into tokens, therefore you get into non-fungible tokens, and then you get into, why don't we just have a currency? And then of course that currency has to be digital. If it's digital, it makes sense that it's crypto-based, and therefore you have the emergence of crypto. So cryptocurrencies, and I spoke about this in Davos as well, cryptocurrencies per se are not critical, are not even essential, not even mandatory for the metaverse. Blockchain technology, on the other hand, is fundamental because blockchain provides us with a method of A, tokenizing a physical object, and B, tracking and tracing and monitoring that object's movement as well as the object's interactions. That is something very fundamental in the metaverse. Every avatar, that will interact in the digital world is effectively, if you look at the maths behind it or the algo behind it, these are basically tokens that are exchanging data over interfaces. Right, and so this the tokenomics side of it apart, these are effectively unique digital objects that are interacting in ways that they can, and they're exchanging information. And this information is a record by itself, is a metadata of the digital object. There are various ways of managing this. Blockchain provides a very efficient and scalable way of doing that, and therefore blockchain is probably the right technology as a fundamental pillar of the metaverse. So, to summarize, blockchain, yes, fundamental, required, and the right fit. Cryptocurrencies, absolutely, we can do them and we can use them, and there will probably be wide adoption of them. But you can build, scale, and operate a metaverse without using crypto.
And that's really interesting. Thank you for that, because I noticed also that you recently were elected onto the Interpol expert group for the metaverse, and that focused primarily on metacrimes. Is that right?
That's right.
So how exactly do you see then these issues of privacy, security, and ownership being addressed in the metaverse when you're talking about these blockchain technologies and the decentralization of the web?
So, the Interpol, to start with, I mean, hats off to them because they have been really very forward thinking. So I don't know how many of the audience of how many members of the audience of this podcast know, but the Interpol actually have created their own proto metaverse in which they have trained virtual Interpol agents, and they've actually got them to check documents in a virtual environment, and they're preparing actively for a world which will be almost entirely digitally immersive, i.e. metaverse and metaverse oriented. Now, when it comes to metacrimes and the rationale behind this, the fact is that metacrimes would broadly, in my opinion, fall in two categories. Category one is the category of metacrimes that extend from the physical world. So somebody who's scamming you in the physical world will then try and scam you in the metaverse, right? That's one area. The other area are what we call pure metacrime. We haven't seen this yet. I mean, we have seen them in RoboCop and other futuristic Snow Crash as well. We've seen that very good point there, Serene. And yeah, you're going to have pure robot criminals in the sense that algorithms, AI or not, algorithms written to defraud others. and working almost independently of anything else. It's algorithms without any control, without any human control, or without any traceable human control, running amok and trying to wreak havoc. Of course, it sounds futuristic, but it is a plausible scenario. But I think the majority of things will fall in between. The majority of things will be people who are in the physical world will have some sort of representation in the metaverse, whether that's an avatar or as part of a group of avatars or through other mechanisms, and will try and commit crimes against other such similar avatars who represent other people. And this is where I think law enforcement in general, currently how it's structured, fails dramatically. Currently, I mean, even with the evolution in law enforcement in the UK, in Europe, and also in the US, most things are very disconnected. Recently, I had a phone stolen, and the officer I was speaking to, he was very kind, and he was very honest. And he said, "Look, sir, there is, even though I pointed out to him through my apps, I knew exactly where the phone was." He said, "Look, that's in a part of East London, and you are reporting this crime where it has happened. That's in West London. I don't have the resource. I don't have the jurisdiction to send a police officer from here to that location because it's not my jurisdiction. I will have to go to Central Command, and there's no way Central Command will instruct somebody in East London, police officer in East London, to go and pick up your phone, because it's not a good use of police resource." And I fully understood that. But if you think about the structure today, even within a city like London, the police forces and the law enforcement are highly balkanized. Right? They're very local. They do not work across jurisdictions unless there's some centralized mechanism to make that happen. And the centralized mechanism, like anything else, has to prioritize. So the Interpol has realized that with this kind of a structure around the world, it's exactly the same thing around the world. The metaverse can be a criminal's haven, because they can do whatever they want. They can be from one country, scamming people from a completely different country. The assets or the proceeds of the crime being processed in a third country, and the outcomes of that being delivered in the fourth country. And who is responsible to track and manage and chase them? The country in which they receive the actual physical proceeds of that, they might have committed no crime at all in that country. And therefore, the police in the country will not move a finger, right? So you've got to have global intergovernmental enforcement mechanisms, and you need to have the law enforcement actually on the metaverse, not off the metaverse. I think this is where Interpol is being very forward thinking, and I was really honored that the community nominated me, and the Interpol invited me to join the metaverse board. We're early days. We're just having the first meeting will be in the recent days, and then we will take it from there. And here we're not even scratching the surface of what can happen. So I think the best thing to do about these things, again, is going back to what I said earlier, is that we have to keep a very open mind as to what kind of crimes can happen. What is certain is that crimes will take place, no matter how structured and how well managed the metaverse is, no matter if that's government owned by a company, completely decentralized, where, like Decentraland, where the individual servers that serve different decentralized nodes have no connection with each other. And these are, even at the human level, these are people who might have never met, but they run Decentraland servers. So you could have other examples of that. And so you've got these challenges add to the complexity of managing it, but manage it must, because if it doesn't, then I can assure you that one of the best ways in which you will have disengagement from the metaverse is people think this is a haven for crime. And there's a collective need and responsibility for all the stakeholders, the companies, the governments, the people, and organizations, to come together and make that happen. And what you'd be gratified to know is that there is currently a number of organizations around the world, including at the World Economic Forum, where the topic of governance of the metaverse, which includes digital crimes and digital harms, are being looked at. I'm not saying that we have any idea how to deal with it yet. We probably don't. We are learning, but we know that this is an issue that has to be dealt with, and it's a top priority.
I think that's a great first step. And because this is a UCL AI Society podcast, it would be a meta crime if I didn't end with the AI question. So what role do you see AI playing in shaping our reality outside of the metaverse? And then how do you see this affecting society and the economy in coming years, or what are your hopes to see from AI and the metaverse in the future?
Absolutely. And I think another meta crime is to equate AI with ChatGPT. And anybody who studies AI has probably been tearing their hair out. Anybody, a practitioner in AI is tearing their hair. Oh my God, is ChatGPT now seen as being the epitome of AI? The matter of fact is, the reason Microsoft put it out there is because it's among all the advanced AI programs they have, this is the least advanced. This is their consumer get the data program, right? Their real AI programs which do not make up stuff, and is things that they're using are being sold to their customers and and governments, mostly governments, and that's not ChatGPT, right? So the fact of the matter is, AI is, and it's interesting because 10 years ago, when I was in computer science, or even before that, actually, I think it was probably more than 10 years, when in computer science, AI was the frontier of computer science at that point, because we would say, yes, one day we will have AI. That one day has arrived. We are now in the world where there is AI, and AI is reality. Now, you could argue about the sophistication of that. Most of it is still very much pattern matching. Most of it is still very much Fourier transformations and nothing more. But nevertheless, it has now come into the mainstream, and I would challenge that any major Fortune 500 CEO or board that of a company that deals with the technology, or even doesn't deal with technology, does not know about AI. They know about AI, and they're thinking about how to incorporate that into their daily operations. Many companies are already doing that, and there's a range of services available. Having said that, again, when the AI, if you think of it as an ocean, we're just barely on the surface. And there's a lot that has to be done in terms of moving from, for example, a linear problem solving, which a lot of AI still is, on the border of linear and non-linear. We haven't really gone into pure non-linear problem solving because we just don't have the compute power to do some of those things. But we're going to get there. And AI is going to become more and more sentient. Those who say AI will not become sentient, they are either fooling themselves or fooling others, or knowingly saying something wrong, because AI will become sentient. It's obvious from the mathematics of how this works, is that you come to a point where anybody who studies maths knows that beyond a certain point, you are not able to mathematically model the world anymore. And so what happens there is beyond our sentience to understand. Will we have AI that can turn malevolent, and that's a big concern for society? Yes, that is plausible. That is beyond plausible. That's possible, and it could happen. And should we be prepared for such an eventuality? Absolutely, we should prepare for it. But does that mean that we should be so scared of AI that we shouldn't experiment and we shouldn't make more powerful AI? Absolutely not. What's the balance to be had? The balance to be had is through ethics, right? Balance to be had is ethics, but I would specify further that it should be multi-stakeholder ethics. It's very easy to define ethics when it's you and 4 people looking like you sitting in a room talking about things that you have been talking about for the last 30 years. That's not ethics to me. Ethics means talking to those people who probably have no exposure to AI, but whose lives and who represent people whose lives will be impacted by it, and bringing on their concerns and what they would like to see as being addressed in this area. So multi-stakeholder ethics boards need to be set up. That has to be at the company level. That also has to be at the governmental level. Ultimately, AI is now coming to a point where governments will have to get involved. And I think any serious AI company will tell you that obviously they welcome some sort of government intervention. The EU has gone much further. The EU has already set up a sort of do good charter, and laws are about to follow. More laws are about to follow, and I think that's the right approach. Of course, we shouldn't stifle innovation. We shouldn't make it impossible for AI companies to grow and scale in Europe, and that balance has to be met. But nevertheless, the idea that, for example, something as simple as face recognition, a wrong or a mistaken face recognition is something that can then tag you for the rest of your life. This should never happen. And people should be held to account if these things happen. And people meaning it could be the algorithm or the design of the algorithm, etc. So this is a very complex topic, but I think when you add the metaverse to it, it becomes really interesting, because a lot of what you see in the metaverse will be AI. A lot of the interactions of avatars will be AI. So a certain degree, you will have to be comfortable enough to say that an avatar that's driven by algorithm, that's modeled on your behavior, your thoughts, is accurate enough to represent you, but more interestingly or more relevantly, accurate enough not to misrepresent you. And we haven't cracked that barrier yet, where we can manage the boundaries of what an algorithm should be able to do. ChatGPT is one great experiment that shows you that, in fact, if you question that thing for in a few ways, it'll give you the exact opposite answer to what it gave you a few minutes ago, right? Which means that you can manipulate algorithms and data to get the outcome that you want. And in other words, you can manipulate algorithms to get the outcome that you want, but maybe not necessarily the beneficiary wants, right? So I think what we're doing in UCL on AI work and in the new campus as well with robotics and all of that is very essential. We should do more of that. And absolutely, I would say that AI, like digital twins, AI is a fundamental component of the metaverse, and we need to understand more and do more, not less.
All right, thank you. It's been an honor having you on. And thank you once again for coming.
Thank you, Serene. Thank you, Eduardo. And thank you for this invitation, AI Society of UCL. And hopefully we will have many more occasions to meet. Thank you.
Thank you.